Matty Wade is pretty much hated by, kind of everyone that isn't on his side. He sledges and looks at people with disdain, and at the moment he's got a bit of a comic mustache as well.
This is the last book. It's almost as good as a Minecraft video. Imagine that.
And I remember one international cricketer telling me that Matty Wade had no right being that aggressive when he was so shit. I mean, he's not so shit. But he's also never been, that fantastically good. I invested in him very early on as I'm Victorian, and he was with my team. And my early memories of Matty Wade were him always coming to the crease when Victoria was about to lose a match, and then him saving the day. I have this feeling or this memory that he once won Victoria a title by being hit in the head by a bouncer. And that sounds completely made up, but it's also entirely on brand for Matty Wade. He's been a survivor, first of cancer when he was young, then he was the keeper who took the gloves from Brad Haddin, then he was the keeper who took the gloves from Brad Haddin again, and then Australia throwing him in when he was completely lost with the bat. I mean, his batting is, at best, kind of bruised and weird. And he seems to only play for Australia when they are desperate or out of ideas. Or that one time they brought him back because he was a professional sledger. And in this tournament, they have made him bat at number 7, which is where his career started, but also where he's never been that good. In 13 innings before tonight, his top score was 23 not out in the 2009 Champions League against the Cape Cobras from 29 balls. And he hasn't been that much better when he's batted at 6 either. He's been probably worse when he's batted at 5. He's been dire when he bats at 4. Not really that much chop at 3. Basically, unless he is open, Matty Wade has, throughout his entire career, been a very, very ordinary T20 player. So of course Australia put him as far from opening as possible, because that's what international teams do. But they did it because despite his modern career record in that position and playing T20 cricket for Australia in general, they trust Matty Wade when things get tough. That's why they have continued to turn to him in all the different formats at different stages. And this game did get tough. Pakistan had their quickest scoring power play of the tournament. I mean, that's not saying much, as Pakistan generally, press the snooze button when they go out on the field. But scoring 47 and taking a big over from Maxwell, making Cummins bowl twice in a period of the game he doesn't like to, it felt like a really big win for Pakistan, especially as, they didn't lose a wicket, which is kind of their thing. And they were really a long way ahead in this game until Adam Zampa stood up. Mitch Marsh had just bowled one of his very rare overs and Pakistan had gone straight for him. And Maxwell had got through one of his, but it was in this period that the 2 Zampa overs really stood out. The 7th over went for 4 runs and the 10th over went 1 for 3. And this was quite clearly when Pakistan was deciding to go after the spinners. And so Zampa bowled like it was the death. And Babar Azam was caught on the boundary. And that one ball really allowed for Australia to get rid of their 5th bowling overs out of the way. Maxwell could zip through a good matchup and a new batter at the crease for his last over. And in all, Australia's 5th bowler went for 31 runs, lower than the runs per over in this match. That's a huge win. So it meant that the first half of Australia's all-round gamble was successful. Zampa, of course, bowled well all the way through the game, not just that period, but he was probably even better at the death. But he's been outstanding all tournament long. He's bowled well enough to cover for Hazelwood's occasional spills at the death, and allowed for Maxwell, Marsh, Stoinis to get easy overs to bowl. But the way that Pakistan bat also helped Australia, because Australia knew that they would chip it around for the first 10 overs before attacking, which meant that they could slip their 5th over bowlers right up the top. Incredible run machines, but they don't really punish you at the top. And so Australia just put all their weaker bowlers up front and got rid of them really quickly. And that meant that Pakistan had to score very big from the best bowlers. And Hazelwood's over aside, I think Australia's plan really worked. And while Pakistan had a good score, it wasn't as high as you would think considering their incredibly fast start, well, fast for them, and the low wicket total, and the fact that Australia do not really have a strong 5th bowling option. But all that would have looked absolutely fine if Shaheen had had one of his overs. And gee, didn't he come close to having one of those overs? There's been a lot talked about in this tournament about players having weaknesses to left arm seam on the basis of Shaheen Afridi dismissing them. In the first over tonight, he proved to be just an incredibly destructive force in cricket. Finch didn't even bother referring his delivery, and Marsh survived a leg stump Yorker by millimetres. It looked like Marsh was playing the ball several minutes after it was bowled, but Shaheen didn't take him or Warner, even though Warner did play and miss at one by about 1.5 feet. And then Marsh played a great innings that really kept Australia in the game when they struggled later on. And Australia got the Warner who used to dominate the IPL year after year. And Australia might have won quite easily if Warner had not walked to what really seemed to everyone to be a play and miss. And it is worth noticing here just how bizarre some of the things that Australia did, like Mitch Marsh going in for the first over of the game while Shaheen Afridi was bowling. I mean, if you have Steve Smith in your side and you're carrying him, surely you are saving him for times when the world's most explosive new ball bowler is about to detonate your entire top order. But it wasn't just that. Australia's first 4 wickets, 3 of them, they sent in weird choices. Marsh ahead of Smith. Smith ahead of Maxwell when the spinners were on in the 7th over. Isn't that what Maxwell had been doing in the IPL? And then Stoinis ahead of Wade, when in doing so, it was quite clear that Pakistan were going to try someone to spin the ball away from the right-handers, which basically allowed for Imad Wasim to come on and steal an over for 3 runs. And if Pakistan were going to win this, either Shaheen cutting the head off the top order or the spinners clamping down in the middle was how it was going to go. And they should have won it. They have an incredibly balanced side with 8 batting options and 6 or 7 if you want to count Shoaib Malik bowlers. That's incredible. They've made a side that makes good consistent runs, and luckily for them, their bowlers are Pakistani World Cup bowlers who are generally hard to get away. Put it this way, coming into this game, they had made 176 or more 26 times in international T20 cricket, and they had lost twice. Of course, one of those was a World Cup semi-final to Australia. And in the 7th over, Jarrod did come on, took a wicket, and applied the clamp I was talking about. But a lot happened in the 8th over. The ball got caught in Mohammad Hafeez's hand. And that's not something that generally happens to off-spinners. Warner realised very quickly that it was going to be a no ball and went down the wicket and whacked it for 6. He took another 2 runs from the free hit. Now, the first ball of the 8th over usually goes for 1.1 runs. This time it went for 9. And at this point, Warner was probably not going to attack Hafeez, as he doesn't really like to attack off-spin. And Smith was the other batter there. He was new to the crease and usually would probably try and manoeuvre 1s or 2s. So Hafeez turned what could have been an easy over for Pakistan into a very bad one. He also bowled a wide later on. And the next over, Warner went after Shadab's leg spin, which meant after 26 balls of spin in the innings, at that point, they'd lost 1 wicket for 47 runs. Now, the next 22 balls, they managed 3 for 17, but they had a cushion because of how quick they'd been against spin before then. You might have seen that I made a video about Australia and then Gamble for this World Cup a week back. They knew they didn't have anything resembling a genuine all-rounder, so they have had to weaken their batting or bowling each game. They started this series by picking extra batters. They then changed their mind in the middle and went back to bowling. And now for this game, they went for extra batting again. Look, no one knows what would have happened if Australia had picked a different lineup and gone with that extra bowler. But in the 13th over of this game, they were 5 wickets down. And had that happened with an extra bowler in the lineup, Ashton Agar would have come to the crease. But let's give credit to the people who were actually out there as well, because it was Stoinis who really saved Australia here. Remember I said Australia scored 17 runs off 22 balls of spin? Well, one of those was a muscled 6 by Stoinis, massively against the flow of the game, against Shadab of all bowlers. And Wade did get stuck at the start of his innings as well. After almost 5 overs in the middle, he was 8 from 9. But by that point, Stoinis had already hit boundaries off Haris Rauf and Hasan Ali and Shadab, including a straight drive from a Yorker that power feeded around the stumps. Stoinis, like Wade and everyone else in T20 cricket, is an opener, and Australia have used him down the order because they have to, but they've also occasionally put him back up the order because they've not been sure how to get the most out of him. He's been a little bit hit and miss, but over the last couple of years, he's become very, very good at playing down the order in T20 cricket, and that's because he's been doing it in the IPL. Australia just don't play enough T20Is for him to get used to that spot, but he does it so much for Delhi, and he's got quite good at it. That's kind of what Australia needed today, and he did it perfectly. And there's another thing that went in Australia's favour at this point. Wade and Stoinis have played 52 T20s in their career at the MCG. About 20% of their matches in T20 cricket have been at one ground. Now, anyone who knows anything about the MCG will tell you it's a big ground, a bit like the ground at Dubai. And there's 2 important things about playing T20 on a big ground. If you're a very smart player, you're going to find a lot of 2s. And if you want to hit a 6, my God, do you have to hit the ball hard. There was a 17-ball period during their partnership where they only found 1 boundary. But during that time, they hit 4 2s. Now, it was the 6s that won the game, but it was the 2s that kept them in it. And yes, Pakistan's death bowling wasn't good enough. But Australia's weren't exactly great either. In fact, at one stage, the Australian bowlers didn't look like they could actually hit the pitch. There were so many full tosses. The big difference is that Wade and Stoinis just put away so many poor balls, and the Pakistani batters at the death could not. But there are 2 massive things that I've not mentioned yet, and I can only imagine they're very much in your mind. How about this? The 2 loudest sounds at this match were the coin hitting the ground for the toss and Hasan Ali dropping Wade. This is arguably the greatest Pakistani fielding side ever. They dive, back up, sprint, catch, cut off 1s. They probably could have got a run out of 2 if you were being very picky and there was a bad misfield out on the boundary at one point. But in 2016, Pakistan fielded like a club cricket side. And they have made incredible leaps and bounds when it comes to fielding. And then Matty Wade hoiks one to the leg side, and Hasan Ali drops it. Remember, of course, that Steve Smith dropped just as easy a chance earlier in the game. But no one's going to remember that. Hasan's drop has already been tattooed on the broken hearts of Pakistani fans. But it was sixes rather than the drop or the twos that defined this partnership. Stoinis started their partnership with one, and Wade finished the match with 3 of them. Game over, man. Game over. Matty Wade is always scrappy and sometimes effective, and Australia usually throw him into the worst possible positions and just hope he makes it work. His batting is kind of put together with spit, swearing, and things he found in his shed. And his career has been long, odd, and often frustrating. And I'm not sure this is how he imagined his Australian career when he was a freak young talent. But he's batted on when the selectors didn't rate him, when certain captains or coaches haven't had his back, when home fans have turned on him over and over again, and even in those occasions when he's looked miles away from his next run. But in this innings, all the fight and the scrappiness came out of him in a good way. And it read 6-6-6. You could make a pretty good argument that the 2 best teams went home in the semi-finals of this tournament. And there is absolutely no doubt at this point that the toss is playing way too big a role in all of this. But I do think that Matty Wade would hear what you have to say and say, fuck that. See the scoreboard, champ.